Hi-Rez has got a serious problem on their hands right now. It revolves around the state of Bluestone Pendant. Since a significant buff heading into patch 10.1, it has been dominating the role that it wasn't even intended for. Junglers have been building, or arguably abusing it since then, even after Hi-Rez gave it a small nerf to try and bring it back in line. While the nerf had some effect, it is still widely accepted as the most meta jungle starter for ability-based assassins. So just nerf Bluestone's damage so junglers don't want to build it, right? Well, this is where the problem really comes from. Warriors really don't want to see Bluestone nerfed because it contributes to most of their wave clear, and it also carries a lot of their damage, especially early in the game when the lane is at its most unstable. Now, I'm not a solo lane player, so I can't speak for them, but I think I can reasonably generalize that solo is a lot more fun when both players can actually threaten each other with damage. If both solo laners have no chance to kill each other, then the lane becomes boring very fast. Especially with the build path right now just being a rush into Breastplate of Valor, which can nearly single-handedly stalemate the lane. And this is the real problem facing Hi-Rez with the next balance patch. How can they change Bluestone so other jungle starters can shine while allowing solo laners to still deal good damage to each other without having other roles steal their items? Here's my suggestion. First, we're going to take a little bit of damage off of Bluestone, but still keep it viable. This will also stop junglers from using it to gain too much pressure early. I also think it would be smart to lower the damage against jungle camps slightly to make it very clear that Bumba's Dagger and Eye of the Jungle will allow you to outfarm Bluestone junglers. Now, I don't intend for the nerfs here to do anything too big. We still want the item to keep its identity in solo lane and still be viable. So I say, in addition to those nerfs, we give it a buff to lane minion damage only. This means warriors and ability-based hunters can still use it to gain early lane clear and a little bit of good brawling damage. But it is worse for the uses junglers are buying it for. I think that's a good start, but it only solves one of the problems I brought up earlier. We still need a way to ensure that warriors can still threaten each other with damage after Bluestone's damage is slightly decreased. And that's what Step 2 is for. At the beginning of Year 10, every class was given a passive that automatically applies to every god within it. Warriors received % cooldown reduction, but to compensate for this, Hi-Rez removed the cooldown reduction from blue buff. This made it so that blue buff is probably the weakest buff on the map. To fix this, I would give blue buff an aura of protection reduction, specifically to the highest protection target within its range. That way solo laners remain tanky to everyone else on the map in the early game, but also can't abuse blue buff to reverse ganks. And most importantly, they can still hit each other for good damage by reducing each other's protections. Obviously, the fear is that this would make warriors OP, but I personally don't think it would, because if they do rotate out early to team fights, they reduce the protections of the highest protection target, who's most likely going to be the other team's support or their lane opponent rotating with them. So they still need to find a good build that balances tanky stats with damage so that they can still threaten backliners. I'm not sure what exact amount any of these changes should be, but I do think this makes sense principally. Junglers go back to using their own starters, and warriors can still use Bluestone as a strong early game pressure starter, as well as actually being able to deal damage to each other. Now, this does seem like a roundabout way to get here, but I think it also creates the least amount of balance problems. I suspect Hi-Rez might just nerf Bluestone's damage overall, or give it a scaling value to nerf it early game, but still allow it to remain somewhat strong through the game, which wouldn't prevent junglers from building it. Or I can also see them just buffing Warrior's Axe and nerfing Bluestone's damage. I wouldn't like that change either, because Warrior's Axe seems to be on the brink of viability for mid laners right now, so buffing it is probably not a good idea. Either way, it will be interesting to see how Hi-Rez chooses to handle this. I just hope whatever they decide to do, that it's a considered choice and strikes a good balance for both solo and jungle. Thanks for watching.